Alright, so I wanted to make like a quick video. I did another couple of videos where I wanted to make like kind of a porting video for people who have never done this before. So basically, kind of from my experience, because sometimes it's a little easier to learn from someone that you're kind of on the same level of, if you're a novice, if you've never even like cut metal with a rotary tool. And that video ended up being about 2 hours of me rambling, so I'm just gonna kind of like rush through what's going on with my build. So these are the original E7s that I built, or not built but ported, that came off of my van. And yeah, now I have 4 E7s, so 2 pairs, one from a Mustang, one from a van, but it's the same casting. And what happened with the old ones was, way back when, oh good, I can show that. So there was a lower intake bolt that got snapped off, or not snapped off, but it had to be torched out or something. Like maybe it came out, but there was still molten steel in there that got up on the thread. So I'm like, okay, maybe that'll be simple. I drilled it out to the appropriate size without hitting the threads, and I bought a long tap, like a pulley tap. Where's the rest of it? So something like this, it's called a pulley tap, and this was like $20, high-speed steel, and it seemed to be going nice. It was opening up the original ports, and I'm sure other people out there that have tapped holes, have broken taps. Like if you hit that torque snag, it's just not gonna work for you, and it'll end up snapping. So it's really easy to get kind of like overzealous, I guess. You can still kind of see evidence of the molten metal, but and by heated, like I mean like acetylene, obviously. It was like melted off of there. So that was one thing. The other thing was there was a valve cover bolt that had to get torched off. I went to like re-drill and tap it, and it turned into a nightmare. And there's like either a broken drill bit or a broken tap, or an easy out, I think, is what broke. You could take flux core and basically like drill that out more and weld it in and then re-tap it, and that would be fine. Like flux core for carbon steel will still work on cast iron. It's just not going to have the same PSI limits, but people do it with like cast iron frying pans, and for using something like that, it'll definitely hold. So for something like a valve cover gasket, it should, for the torque specs, like it would work. So my whole thinking was, well, I'm going to have to pay a machine shop, which was hard to find, and they never got back to me after I was referenced. So I was like, you know what, I'll just, how much would it be, worst case scenario, if I have to buy some? Luckily I knew a Mustang man. My friend actually had a couple of E7s. He had a couple of GT40s, which probably would have been smarter to get those, but I had already got, I already had my valves, and these, the intake valve on these is the 178, a GT40 is a 185. The exhaust valves are actually both a 146, but I think the iron GT40s are still pedestal mount, so your rocker sits up on pedestals instead of a stud. So that means they're non-adjustable. They have a channel that goes between to keep them both, each cylinder in line. And the other thing is, I saw someone, like, I had hogged out my exhaust ports on these basically for a Jegs long tube header, which then I didn't even know if the long tubes are going to clear under my doghouse in my van. So I was like, shit, I may have to run a shorty, and these were like hogged out to a 1 5/8, which, like, if you really ran these or ran them with forced induction, they may be fine. But I've seen, this isn't where the ports are they're gonna be larger than this, but you can see the size difference. These are teeny. They're like less than an inch wide. So I think these came out to like 1.5 inches almost. Shit. But anyway, I saw someone pick up like 20 extra foot-pounds, but also like 10, 15 horsepower all through the band, running a smaller port. Shorty headers are actually better for low end anyway. It's kind of like advancing your cam timing. Like, I don't, like, maybe overall a long tube is still going to be broader, but a shorty can make better low end power. It's one of its advantages. So anyway, so because this is a 5,000 pound truck, port velocity throughout becomes important, which obviously a smaller port is going to have better speed than a larger port, right? So that's a general principle that you go by. So these trucks with the long plenum with a dual throttle body, I think I've like tried to work it out by looking at different dynos. I looked at a 347 that was EFI, where it was making torque and so on. I think that the long runners, especially if they're ported out, are about 30 foot-pounds more on the bottom than a standard, like at least the HO style plenums with like a 75 to 90 millimeter. Because this also will, with the upgraded throttle body, it's about 122 millimeters. So anyway, so that was why I had to switch, and so now I'm starting over. Today and yesterday I kind of remembered why it's kind of a pain in the ass. Like, your hands end up feeling like, you know, it's like nails on chalkboard. It's a big job. There's probably 30 or 40 hours into this because I took my time, and I also use an 1/8 inch. I have a 1/4 inch on a regular drill right now, which you should just get a rotary tool, but the cool thing about an 1/8 inch is it does allow more control. But to get the job done, a 1/4 inch obviously is better, but when you get into the bulls, there's a lot more finesse that you would need. So I'm just gonna show like what I plan to do, if you're ever doing it, what to do without having to like watch tons of information, especially if you're only like lapping your valves and you don't have access to a 3-angle valve job. All right, I want to show one thing that I noticed was an original idea. I haven't seen anyone do this, but and these things flash rust like crazy. I saw someone else, like, they'll oil them, especially in the exhaust ports. I should have done that. All it takes is some humidity in your house and you'll see spots of rust. But all right, so this is an oil return hole, and even though this new head has been soda blasted, you can see this is a spot where a lot of sludge will build up from your rocker valley, right? And I've seen people do this, or at least, like, I think on Engine Masters in the lifter valley, they'll chamfer the oil return holes just the same. So I said, well, why not do that on in the rocker valley? I thought about it for the pushrod holes, but they don't seem to have a problem getting oil back in there because there's no sludge marks, not even in there. So I polished that out. It did look better before, but you can tell that's a lot smoother than this rough surface. That's the thing about the reason why that looks like that. All right, I used to work, well, I did security there, but I used to work in a foundry, and they did ferrous, like iron and aluminum. I don't know if they did steel, and I had to keep an eye on like temperatures of the furnace and stuff like that, and I would have to do rounds, and I was always fascinated by casting molds. I forget the proper term for them, but the reason that looks like that is because this is actually cast in sand. Maybe people already know that, whatever, that's not really news, but that's something to keep in mind of why this isn't smooth, because you're basically looking at the negative space of marks of silica. So anyway, so I thought that this may help to move oil a little better without sludge sticking there. It may help a faster return, which is obviously overall good for the system. Not a huge deal, but it doesn't take that long to do. And if you look, like, the reason why that could be bad is, let's say you get a bunch of sludge caking up like that, and eventually, I don't know, or you run a high mileage oil that has detergent in it and it starts to break up, is now that's going to go back into all of your bearings, and then you have, like, embeddability to worry about, and that's how you spin, like, a rod bearing or something, or maybe a main gets clogged up and starts to scratch your crank and you lose oil pressure. So that's something to think about. This particular build is running, like, I have tri-metal bearings because the crank is forged, and those are pretty good for, like, if you do happen to get in a situation, but it's not a bad little trick. Like, if you do that in your oil return and your lifter valley, so it's just something I thought of after I noticed that. And again, that's after being soda blasted. Everything else on these new heads looks great, even though as soon as the humidity comes back, I'm sure these will rust, so I better get some oil on it because they look awesome now. Okay, so since I'm still in the rocker valley, a couple of things you have to do with E7s. When you're doing new rockers, you want a new channel kit, okay? Because other ones will, like, warp and twist, and it's just better to get something brand new from Ford Racing or Performance. With a channel kit, you need a shim kit because these are non-adjustable rockers. So you need, it comes with, like, two, I forget the shim sizes, but when you're setting up the valves, like, there's, I forget what it is, like a clockwise or one rotation and a half. You use one shim, so you're using one or the other, and I can't remember how many rotations, but because they're non-adjustable, and that sets your preload. So channel kit, rocker kit. Another thing to note, I don't think these are the best valve stem seals. Like, yeah, they look nice because they put these cool locks on them. Of course, I can't show you the other ones, or I'd have to lift that whole head up here, but I noticed, I don't think my friend did these, so I can talk about this. Sorry if he did, but I don't think he did. I noticed the differences between these heads is this one had more oil around the valves, whereas these were fairly clean outside of carbon, and this thing had over 200,000 miles on it. And this one had the factory full steel jacket, so the kind that sits all the way. So notice how those sit halfway. Now that may not necessarily cause it to leak, but I just don't think that they're good. Do you see how that is moving? The full seated steel jacket. So these, I don't know, technically they're improper. They still probably do a good job to squeegee it. They're both positive style. There's positive lock and there's umbrella. The umbrella moves on the valve with the valve. That's like real old school. And then a positive lock squeegees the oil and keeps it in the rocker valley. But here's another thing. When you're getting these, I saw someone, you know, when someone leaves a 2-star review on a video and they're like, oh, this didn't work because they didn't know what they were doing. All right. Someone complained about these valve seals that, like, oh, I had to, like, hammer it on. Yes, these valve seals are an interference fit. All right. That's why they have an installation kit. So the installation kit is basically a knocker where there's a dowel that goes inside the seal, and then you just tap it on there, like not like a Thor hammering it back to the Rainbow Bridge, but you do have to love tap those on, and they seat all the way. But I say just get the factory full steel jackets. Don't, like I said, like these look cool because they're like, oh, it's an open lock, but the steel jacket is a full lock, so not just this little clip. That's what they came from the factory. They're still Viton material. So that's a note on what's going on up here, whether you're running regular rockers or roller rockers. All right. Okay, now here's what I did. I'm not a master porter. That's why I'm kind of doing this video, because you can watch all that stuff, but these guys have so many hours of experience. They're kind of like glazing through everything. People agree and disagree with this, but I'm going to start on the intake ports. Number one, you don't need anything larger than the gasket on the stock gasket on the E7. Like, so I've been told, and the thing is, you don't really need to. You can open up the lower intake more, because it depends on what style intake. Because obviously the E7s cover several different intakes, but I learned this from David Vizard. Someone else said I don't see the benefit of having more velocity at the pinch, but that makes it look very rough there. I may have to blend that in better. So this is the first thing that maybe you should look at, okay, when you're going to do this job, is the pushrod bulge pinch. So you're looking at, it's been taken half down, and it's hard to, but that is a bulge that creates the tightest pinch of the tunnel, right at the opening. And I've seen this on other heads, but to maintain velocity, instead of flattening the whole bulge out, and I'd love to see people post CFM on 2 different versions of this, because again, velocity, low end torque, mass amounts of air, horsepower, so long as you're not just slowing the air down, because then you're going to lose CFM and power anyway. But you only want to do it 50% toward the roof. Okay, because what that does is 2 of the most important parts for gaining air, there's a nice view of my bulwark, is right here, the short turn radius, okay? Majority of the air is going to come that way. By opening that pinch, there's now a nice straight shot. And it saves you time. So that's what I plan to do. I'm going to run it that way. I'm not going to open that whole thing. I'm going to stick to Mr. Vizard there. Okay. Let's look at... whoops. That's alright. It was a Chinese tap set. That thing is garbage. Never buy those. So here's the stock bowls. You can see where I've opened up the radius. The second other important part is the short side radius, which is here. It's more noticeable on the exhaust. So you're going to open that up and just kind of massage everything sharp. Like right there is a sharp edge. And I can give you a hard measurement. So you're going to use your inside calipers. See, I'm rushing through. I've got 6 minutes of video left on here, and I just want to get this done. So you're going to measure from the outside diameter of the actual valve stem hole. So not the metal, because you're shaving all of this out. But from here to the sidewall should be 550 thousandths. I'm pretty sure that's a good rule of thumb, even for a stock 178 valve. Other than that, the other rule of thumb in the radius is go ahead and massage this open, but do not exceed 85% of your valve size. So you wouldn't want it opened, more than 1.6. So definitely not as big as 178. I'm pretty sure. There's different, you'll see people do a 40-degree radius or 50 degrees off the seat and stuff. But just massage it open. Again, this is a video for someone who has no clue and they don't want to get very technical. Okay. That's all you've got to do with that. No, make it look like that. Okay. So, and then on the port opening, get rid of that bulge. But you see how that is all blended in. Same with the exhaust bowl, except this is more noticeable. This is the exhaust exit, okay? You see that sharp edge on the short turn? Get rid of it. It's that simple. Blend it in, get rid of it, smooth it down, because your exhaust is coming from this angle. So it hits there. And the next thing I'm going to show you, so I, on these, got rid of the valve guide boss completely. It was just easier to do. You can do that, or you can shave around it. Again, you're just massaging it open. Try and maintain a limit on your radius to the proportional to the valve, okay? It's nothing special. It's not like the intake where you should focus on a certain area. You're basically, there is more material on, what is that, the inside or outside wall? I don't know. But take that boss right out of there, really, if you want. Like, I am running stainless steel valves. Like, that's something I thought about to maybe leave some extra with a harder valve like that. Of course, these look disgusting now from all the rust. They were very pretty ports. This is the thermactor one, so one of your holes has a weird thing. Other thing in the exhaust, you're going to shave down your thermactor bumps. That's the other one. I would start with that pushrod bulge on the intake and then the thermactors, because you'll get a feel for the rotary tool. Oh, I already started shaving them out of this one, but you can get a better idea. So, alright, that's basically it for the bowls and the ports. And then these, don't make them that large unless you want to really play around. Like if you have a inch and over a quarter kind of shorty header like I am, maybe gasket match them, but don't go crazy. Okay, so now in the combustion chamber, there are, like, I've seen, like, Charles Servetio, like, scallop here, but I think that's for larger ports. I think if you round out the hard edges, that's better to eliminate detonation. Well, I mean, if you're low compression anyway, it's not really probably a real big problem, but you could always run, like, a higher octane. Okay, so what's going on here is... this is called a scavenge plateau, and that could probably be blended in better and flattened out, but you can see the difference in the hard edge, right? And what that is because exhaust will hit here at about 500 miles per hour, and you can see now why that edge is important in the direction of exhaust flow, but it's going about 500 miles here per hour. And what happens is a lot of exhaust gas, like stale air, gets left in the combustion chamber, right? So that helps scavenge the exhaust better and basically exit the chamber a little quicker. Another thing to do here is to scallop the spark plug boss, which you can see the original one is convex if you're looking at it. And then you're going to make that concave. Also round out here. It helps, this is the center of valve, like if you want to flatten out that casting mark and smooth that up, that's good too. And that's basically all I plan on doing on these. Like, hopefully I'll get like 200 CFM or something out of the intake and 150 plus out of the exhaust. Like, keep it simple if it's your first time. That's what I plan on basically doing again here. I'm not going to clone the exhaust ports, but I thought my intakes came out pretty decently. I may try to pinch that up well, and then you just leave this as a rough finish, you know, to help atomize, because that's air and fuel coming out of there. And then, you know, look up other videos, but this was just a quick, no bullshit video of what to really do with these and what I plan on. But it'll definitely take time, like 20 hours or so. Go slow, then lap your valves, figure out how to do that, and you're all set. See ya.